Hi everybody, I'm here today with a Let's Make a Card video. I'm going to be featuring the For Peeps Sake stamp set from Two Paper Divas. Here's a look at the card I'm going to be making today, so let's go ahead and get started. So as you can see, I have the For Peeps Sake stamp set and I've got the egg image loaded onto an acrylic block ready to go. Now what I've done is I've just taken some papers from my stash and I have kind of color matched them. So I've got 3 pattern papers that match. I've picked out 2 plain cardstocks that match. And I also pulled out this Die Cuts with a View. It's a matte glitter paper and it kind of went along with the colors, so I pulled one of those out. I've got my VersaFine Onyx black ink out and I'm just going to stamp an egg onto each of these papers. And then I'm going to go ahead and take my scissors and I'm just going to fussy cut each one of these. Now I'm going to go ahead and skip forward here. I won't make you sit and watch me fussy cut, but just remember to turn your paper instead of your scissors, and that makes your fussy cutting so much more easy. So I will go ahead and just skip forward. I won't make you sit through all of these. But now you can see I've got my black Sharpie out and I am just going to go along each of these eggs and run that tip along the edge that I've cut. This is just going to give it a finished look and make it so it doesn't have a wide edge around it. It just looks a lot more finished. Now I've gotten out my big kick here and I've got this Tailored Expressions grass border die and I'm going to cut it out of green cardstock twice. I've also got the Tailored Expressions picket fence die and I'm going to cut it out of white cardstock. Both of these dies are no longer available. However, if you do a quick Google search or go on Simon Says Stamp or whatever and you look for a picket fence die or a grass die, you're going to find a ton. So take your pick. Now I've got, these are also from Tailored Expressions. They're clouds, and I went ahead and ran those through and I've cut 3 clouds, 1 big, 2 small. Now this is a landscape border die from Mama Elephant. It has a stitched edging on it. But what I can do, because I don't want stitch edging on this, is I can just flip it over. And then I've got the stitching is going to be on the top part of my cut. So it won't be on my slope that I'm going to end up using. So that's an option if you do have stitch border dies. You can just flip them around, some of them, and then you've got both options. You can have the stitching, or like I've done here, I've just flipped it around. And now I've got no stitching on the piece I'm going to use. Now with your picket fence die, mine is a little difficult to remove. So what I have is, this is a paper piercer. It's from Stampin' Up. You can find one that's retractable, I believe. It's from Tim Holtz. I would probably get that one if I had a do-over. But I just poke this out and then run my pick along the edge of that. And whenever you pull that up, make sure you keep your finger pressed against it or it's going to curl up on you really bad. So now I've got all my pieces laid out here ready to go and assemble onto my card. I'm going to take that picket fence die. I'm going to put it down with some glossy accents. Now I end up having to cut another one because this is much too low of a placement for it. So if you do make a card similar, just make sure you place yours up higher and you won't have to do one of the steps I do. This also could probably be left out. You don't see a whole lot of it, but it just gives a nice effect. And that is to put that grass border along the picket fence and just cover up the bottom of it. And then I'll just snip off the ends that hang over the edge there. I do have all my pieces taped up and ready to go. I am using double-sided tearable paper tape. And now I've put some of that on the back of each of my eggs, and I've already arranged them on my work surface in the order I want them to go. So I'll just tear off the backing on each of those, and I will just place those down right in front of my picket fence. When I was getting the placement of these eggs, I just wanted to make sure that my images, I didn't have patterned papers right next to each other, and I also didn't have my cardstock pieces, just to give the card a little bit of balance. I've also taken the second grass border die and I put some fun foam on the back of it, or foam tape, excuse me, and I just pop that up right in front of my eggs there, and then I will flip that over and trim off the excess with my scissors. Now at this point, I'm going to move on, but I wasn't happy that you couldn't see my picket fence and all the work I put into that. So I will fix that in just a moment, but for the time being, I'm going to go ahead and adhere that down onto an A2 light blue card base. Now here's where my picket fence, I cut another one out of the same white cardstock. I put glossy accents on it, and I'm going to carefully tuck it behind those eggs there and line it up with the picket fence that's already on the card. So it just kind of extends the die a little further. Moving on to my sentiment, I have put it onto my acrylic block, but I lined it up with my slope there on the card. So once I stamp this down, and I'm stamping in VersaFine Onyx Black ink, you will see that since this is a clear stamp, I was able to bend it, so it's going to follow along very nicely with the curve of my slope on my card. So it just looks like it belongs there. Now to finish this off, I just took my clouds and popped those up with some foam tape, and that finishes the card off. I will leave you with just a few pictures. For more information and a complete supply list, you can visit my blog, craftingwhilecaffeinated.wordpress.com. Thank you guys so much for watching, and happy crafting!